I don't usually mind being alone. In fact, I enjoy it. My apartment is small but cozy, and I had everything set up for a perfect weekend. Leftover pasta in the fridge, a new book to read, and a bad horror movie queued up for later. The night had been quiet, just me and the occasional sound of my upstairs neighbor moving around. But then, right around 11 p.m., I heard a knock. It wasn't loud or impatient, just 3 slow, deliberate taps against the wood. For a second, I thought maybe I imagined it, but when I muted the TV, I heard it again. Soft. Slow. My stomach tensed slightly. I wasn't expecting anyone. I live alone, and my friends would have texted first. My heart started beating a little faster as I got up and walked to the door, pressing my eye to the peephole. A man stood there, middle-aged, with thinning hair and an oddly polite smile. He wasn't doing anything, just standing there, facing my door, his hands at his sides. Something about it felt wrong. If he had the wrong apartment, why wasn't he knocking normally? Why wasn't he checking his phone, looking confused, or even calling out? He just stood there, watching. I considered opening the door to tell him he had the wrong place, but something in my gut told me not to. After a minute, he knocked again. 3 soft taps. Still smiling. My stomach twisted. He wasn't calling out, wasn't fidgeting, wasn't looking around like a normal person would. He was just waiting. I stepped away from the peephole and stood there listening. After another minute, the knocking stopped. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding and went back to the couch. Probably just a mistake. Maybe he'd leave soon. But something inside me didn't believe that. 10 minutes later, it started again. The exact same pattern, 3 soft knocks, a pause, silence. The hair on my arm stood up. I checked the peephole again, half expecting him to be gone. But no, he was still there. Same position. Same smile. I felt my breath catch in my throat. Something was seriously off. He wasn't acting normal. It wasn't like a delivery guy knocking at the wrong door, or a neighbor needing something. He wasn't trying to get my attention. He was just standing there. I turned off the TV, trying to focus on the sound. Every few minutes, the knocking would come back. Soft. Slow. Unrelenting. I turned up the volume, but it didn't help. The sound wasn't just noise, it was intentional. My heart was pounding, and I realized I had started gripping the couch cushion like a lifeline. I grabbed my phone, scrolling through my contacts, but I hesitated. Who was I supposed to call? The police? For a guy knocking on my door? It felt stupid, but the fear wouldn't go away. Half an hour passed. Then 45 minutes. I checked the peephole again, praying he was gone. He wasn't. But this time he had moved. Instead of standing, he was crouching now. His face was closer to the peephole, and his polite smile was gone. He was staring directly into it. For a moment, I couldn't move. It was like my body locked up completely. His eye was level with the peephole, as if he knew I was watching. A sick feeling spread through my chest, an almost instinctual kind of fear. He knew I was looking. I backed away slowly, my breathing shallow, trying not to make any noise. My hands were shaking. I didn't want to check again. I didn't want to see that face. I forced myself to step away from the door and sat on the floor, hugging my knees. Maybe if I ignored him, he'd go away. Maybe he was just some creep playing a prank. I shut my eyes and took deep breaths, willing my heart to slow down. But then I heard it again, 3 soft knocks. And for the first time, I realized something. This man wasn't trying to come inside. He just wanted me to know he was there. I don't know how long I sat there frozen, but when I finally checked the peephole again, my stomach twisted so hard I thought I might be sick. He hadn't moved. He was still there, still crouching, still staring directly into the peephole. But now his face was closer. His eye was almost pressed against the tiny glass lens, as if he was trying to see inside. My breath hitched in my throat. The way he was staring, it wasn't normal. It wasn't just unsettling. It was wrong. I stumbled back from the door, my hands shaking. I wanted to run. I wanted to call someone, but my brain felt scrambled, unable to think clearly. My fingers hovered over my phone screen, but I hesitated. What was I supposed to say? There's a man crouching outside my door, staring at my peephole? It sounded ridiculous. The police would ask if he was threatening me, and the truth was he wasn't. He hadn't spoken, hadn't touched the handle, hadn't tried to force his way inside. But the way he was just waiting, it made my skin crawl. I turned off all the lights. Maybe if he thought I wasn't home, he'd leave. I backed away from the door and sat on the floor, hugging my knees. The knocking had stopped, but that didn't make me feel any better. My apartment felt too quiet, too still, like I was waiting for something awful to happen. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined his face pressed against the peephole, his eyes staring straight into mine. Minutes passed. Maybe an hour. I wasn't sure. But then, a new sound made my stomach drop. A soft scraping noise. Not at the door, but at my bedroom window. I went completely still. My apartment is on the second floor. There's no balcony, no fire escape, nothing that would make sense. Slowly, as if moving too fast would make it worse, I crawled toward my bedroom, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I didn't want to look. I didn't want to see. But something made me do it. I reached the window, my breath catching in my throat. And then I saw him. The same man. Standing outside my second-floor window. I choked on a gasp and stumbled backward, my mind struggling to process what I was seeing. He wasn't smiling anymore. His face was blank, his eyes wide and unblinking. But the worst part, his head was tilted at an unnatural angle, as if his neck had been twisted too far to one side. I clamped a hand over my mouth, forcing myself not to scream. He shouldn't be there. It wasn't possible. And yet, he was. His lips moved soundlessly, like he was saying something, but I couldn't hear it. I couldn't move. My entire body was locked in place, my mind refusing to accept what I was seeing. He was outside my window. The same man, the same blank expression, the same eyes, but this wasn't possible. There was no ledge, no way for him to be standing there. My apartment was on the second floor. Unless he had a ladder, or... No, even that didn't explain it. The way he was positioned, so still, his head tilted at that awful angle. It wasn't normal. My breath came in short, uneven gasps. I needed to get away, needed to run, but I was terrified that if I moved, he'd do something. What, exactly? I didn't know. That was the worst part. I didn't know what he wanted. I pressed my back against the opposite wall, clutching my phone so hard my fingers ached. I wanted to call someone. The police, a friend, anyone. But I was too afraid to make a sound. He was still mouthing something, over and over, but I couldn't hear a word. And then he knocked. Not on the window. On the glass of the peephole in my front door. My stomach dropped. That wasn't possible. He was right there, outside my window. But at the same time, I knew I had just heard it. A soft, slow tap 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 from the front door. My vision blurred as my mind tried to make sense of it, but there was no explanation. He was in two places at once. I felt something deep inside me, a certainty that whatever this was, it wasn't human. I squeezed my eyes shut. This isn't real. This isn't real. My ears were ringing, my pulse hammering so hard it felt like my whole body was vibrating. But when I opened my eyes, he was still there. He hadn't moved, hadn't blinked. The tapping on the peephole came again. Top. Tap. Tap. I bit down on my lip so hard I tasted blood. What do I do? What do I do? I forced myself to move, inching toward my nightstand where my car keys were. If I could just make it to my car, if I could leave, maybe I'd be safe. But as soon as I reached for them, the tapping stopped. The apartment fell into a suffocating silence. No knocking. No movement. Just nothing. And then my phone vibrated in my hand. I almost screamed. The sound was like a gunshot in the silence, making my entire body jolt. I looked down, hands trembling so badly I could barely focus. Unknown number. My breath caught in my throat. I didn't want to answer. Every instinct in my body screamed at me not to. But something about the silence, about the way the tapping had stopped the second my phone rang, it felt deliberate. Like whoever, or whatever, was outside my door and window knew I was holding my phone. I stared at the screen until the call ended. The second it did, the knocking started again. Tap. 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 My entire body went cold. I felt like I was being toyed with, like this thing was playing a game with me. It wasn't just trying to scare me, it was trying to control me. I didn't want to look at the window again, but I had to. If I was going to make it out of this, I needed to know where he was. I turned my head slowly, my heart hammering so hard it made my vision blur. My stomach twisted violently. He was gone. The window was empty. But somehow that was even worse. I forced myself to my feet, my knees weak, and tiptoed toward the peephole. My hands shook as I brought my eye to the glass. Nothing. The hallway outside was empty. My breath shuddered out of me. Had he finally left? Was it over? I exhaled and let my forehead rest against the door, squeezing my eyes shut in relief. I just needed to get out. I'd grab my keys and run. I'd drive to a friend's place, maybe even a hotel, anywhere but here. And then I heard breathing. Not mine. Not from inside the apartment. It was coming from the peephole. I felt it more than I heard it, the faintest whisper of air, as if someone was standing on the other side of the door, their mouth pressed against the glass. My blood turned to ice. I didn't move. Didn't even breathe. The air against the peephole was slow, steady, like someone was waiting. Then very softly a voice spoke. I see you. I don't remember running. 1 second, I was frozen at the door, my body locked in terror. The next, I was in my bedroom, barricading the door with my dresser. My mind was screaming at me to move, 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 but I felt like I was in a nightmare, trapped in slow motion. My fingers fumbled over my phone as I finally dialed 911. The ringing felt like it lasted forever. Then a voice. 911, what's your emergency? I could barely get the words out. Someone is outside my apartment. He won't go away. He was at my door and then my window and now. My voice broke. I couldn't say it. I couldn't tell her what I had just heard through the peephole. The dispatcher kept her voice calm. Are your doors locked? Yes. My throat was dry. My hands were shaking so badly, the phone almost slipped from my grasp. Do you see him now? I turned my head slowly, afraid of what I might find. The window was still empty. My apartment was silent. Too silent. My gut twisted. Something was wrong. The knocking had stopped, the breathing was gone, but it didn't feel like I was alone. I forced myself to stand, my legs like jelly. I needed to go. Now. I crept toward the front door, my keys clenched in my fist. The hallway had been empty before, but I had to check again. I brought my eye to the peephole one last time. He was there. But he wasn't standing. He was hanging. Upside down. His face was level with the peephole, his head twisted in a way that no humans should be. His mouth stretched open into an unnatural grin, but his eyes were wrong. They weren't looking at me. They were looking past me. Behind me. The line went dead. My phone screen flickered, then turned off completely. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. I felt it before I heard it. A breath. Right against my ear. Then knocking. But this time, it was coming from inside my apartment. I don't remember what happened after that. I must have blacked out. The next thing I knew, it was morning. My door was still locked. My window was still shut. My apartment was empty. There was no sign that anyone had ever been there. No footprints, no smudges on the peephole. Nothing. But I know what I heard. What I saw. And sometimes late at night, when everything is quiet, I still hear the knocking. Tap, tap, tap.